Hello, Namaskar, and welcome to the CAA show. Today is election day in America, and it is no secret that this country has seen one of the most divisive elections, if not the most divisive election in US history. And hopefully, it would all be coming to an end today, or as some skeptics are saying, that this could just be the start of a new cycle or move of more divisiveness which would continue on and on. And therefore, to make sense of all this, to decode these American elections for us, is a person, a very dear friend of mine, but also a person in his own right, a very successful entrepreneur, Sanjeev Shah. I'm going to first give you a little bit of introduction about Sanjeev Shah before we get down into the program and talk about these elections. Sanjeev is both an engineer and an advocate. He consults on very large infrastructure projects, especially in the field of aviation, transportation, and urban development. He has undertaken many of these projects in cities like Miami, in Orlando, in Tampa, Dubai, Los Angeles. I could go on and on. The list is very, very long. But in short, he is a very successful entrepreneur. And he also is a person of Indian origin who keeps a keen eye on India-US relations, which also we're going to talk to him today. So Sanjeev, welcome to the CAA show. Great having you on the show.
Good morning, Juggi, and thank you very much for inviting me to have this conversation with you. Good morning to, or good afternoon to all of your viewers. And you're very kind and gracious in your introduction of me. I hope I can live up to the credits that you're giving me.
So you completely deserve those credits, Sanjeev. So Sanjeev, let's start. We all know this has been a very, very divisive election, a very divisive campaigns from both sides. From Kamala Harris. By the way, we in India call her Kamala Harris. A lot of people in America call her Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. So let's start on a positive note. What do you think are some of the more redeeming qualities of both candidates which probably have escaped the public eye, which we don't really talk about? Let's start maybe on a positive note.
Look, I think there's a lot of positivity all around. And what I would offer up is this, is that for about 90% of the issues, most Americans, whether you support Kamala Harris or you support Donald Trump, whether you are an independent or a Democrat or a Republican, 90% of the people have shared values. Unfortunately, what has been happening is that both campaigns have been focusing on the 10% of the area and issues where there is a divergence in perspective. I think that, regardless of what the outcome is, America is going to see a new morning tomorrow. And, somebody sent me a little note which basically said that America is now in labor. Tomorrow we will find out whether it is a girl or a boy. And I believe...
And hopefully not stillborn.
It will not be stillborn. I think that is a guarantee for sure. But the experiment, the American experiment, has been going on for more than 200 odd years. Mm-hmm. And Americans have this attitude and this spirit that nothing is impossible. Some things are just more difficult than others.
So you're saying that there could be maybe grounds of convergence also between these two candidates, though they never really appear in public. Behind the scenes, there could be some convergence also. Would that be in the economic sphere? Would that be in the geostrategic sphere? Where exactly do you think the convergence comes?
Look, I think in terms of convergence, this is my view and my personal view only, is that there is a lot of convergence in, hey, the country needs to be strong economically. If you're strong economically, then you can basically maintain your national security. National security also includes borders. It makes sure that you have a organized immigration system, bringing in the brightest and the hardworking that can add to the American experiment. So I think there's convergence in all these spheres. Where I think the divergence begins to show up is what is the methodology by which you implement so you can get the desired results.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So it's good to know that at least there is hope on the horizon, despite all the talk of divisiveness and all that. But having said that, Sanjeev, let's also talk about a little bit about some of the more negative qualities of these two candidates. We have talked about the positive qualities, the areas of convergence. What do you think is something which we can live without both these candidates offered to the public?
Short answer would be stop demonizing each other. Stop demonizing the people who may have a different perspective than you. I think being a person of Indian origin, there is a saying that I learned while I was a little boy in India, which is that the truth is one, the paths are many.
Ah,
So it goes back to our prior comment, which is there's a lot of convergence in where we want to be,
correct.
where we should be.
That's right.
Path on how we get there is where there is divergence, but we don't have to demonize each other in order to come up with a common sense solution.
Correct.
We just have to accept each other and let the will of the voters be implemented.
But there's this one aspect, Sanjeev, which I think probably the Indian politics has influenced American politics. I never thought I would see the day when politicians would be speaking the way they are speaking against each other. This obviously is something which happens in India all the time. But to see that in America with the kind of language, the kind of words which are being used, it is appalling at times. What's going on out here?
Look, America is a vast country, just like India. You go, you know, when you tell somebody that you live in America, everybody assumes that everything is uniform across the board.
Correct.
The same way, when you tell somebody that you are from India, everybody assumes that India is the same. You often get asked the question, do you speak Indian? There is no Indian language.
That's right.
So when you look at the American population, the culture, the characteristic, the way of speaking varies from region to region. If you go up to New York, which is where Donald Trump is from, people speak their mind.
Yeah.
If you were to compare cities in India, New York is kind of like Mumbai is. The way a Mumbaiker speaks is completely different than the way a person from Delhi would speak.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think that is where some of the things that we are hearing is being taken out of context. You have to understand where the person is coming from and give them some leeway that this is their culture. I'm not saying it is right to demonize people,
Right.
but you do have to be able to speak freely and frankly and what is on your mind, as opposed to couching how you see things into sweetness and words where the receiving party does not truly understand what you're trying to say.
I agree. But having said that, Sanjeev, let me give you another point of view. I think it was 2 years back when when I was, along with my wife, we were in America and we had gone to New York. And then a friend of ours had invited us to Connecticut, if I have got the pronunciation correct. And he told me something very, very interesting but very strange. He said, I'm a registered Democrat. And he says, please don't even mention the word Republican out here, because in this part of the world, we don't even intermarry, the Democrats and the Republicans. I said, are you got to be kidding me? He says, no, this is a fact. We just don't do that. So my question to you is, Sanjeev, do you think that this divisiveness has gone deep down in the social strata also? It has started affecting friendships. What do you have to say about that?
I think it is like the uncle that you invite to the Diwali dinner, and uncle has some very, very strong views.
Right.
And they believe that their view is the only truth.
Yeah.
And other perspectives are totally misguided. I'm going to say this, that at one point in time, America used to be equally or totally divided between Democrats and Republicans.
Right.
Okay. In the past 2 decades, there has been a growing number of Americans who have chosen to be independents. Independent means they do not have a party affiliation with either the Democrats or the Republicans. Now, within the Democrats and the Republicans, you are always going to have outliers. And certainly, many of those outliers are going to have very, very strong feelings, right? And you can apply this to religion, you can apply this to professions, you can apply it to any different thing. So I don't believe that this level of divisiveness is pervasive within American society or the population. I have friends who are Trump supporters. I have friends who are never Trumpers. And I have friends who are supporting Harris. And I have friends who will basically, say that, listen, we understand the flaws that Harris has or the flaws that Trump has,
Right.
but we are going to vote based on who we think is going to be best to guide this country for the next 4 years.
But you mentioned something very significant, Sanjeev. You said the independents, and a lot of political pundits think that the key to these elections could be lying in the hands of these independents, the people, the fence sitters. How important do you think that role would, and we should know in the next 24 to 48 hours, would these independents be playing?
My belief is that they will play a very, very large role because Democrats can be generally when you talk about Democrats or Republicans, and remember, over 200 years, Democrats and Republicans have switched sides.
Okay,
Republicans were the party of Lincoln,
correct.
and Lincoln was the one who abolished slavery. At that point in time, the Democrats were on the opposite side, and they were against Lincoln abolishing slavery. And look at today where we are, and the cycle basically swings up and down. The pendulum swings back and forth. So I don't give any credence to a party affiliation. I give a lot of credence to a value affiliation.
Right.
And today, if you look at the voting rolls and the registered voters, I would say that close to a third of the American public have elected not to be either Republicans or Democrats, i.e., independents. And
Right.
the middle strata, if you would, ranges all the way from center left to center right. And it basically this is a strata of the public that basically is of the opinion, in my view, that government has a limited role. Government needs to be fiscally conservative, the same way that each of us as heads of household control the finance and the budgets of our family. And government has a role in making opportunities available so that the and you have to compare the country to a family unit.
Sure.
You protect your home the same way that you would expect the government to protect the borders of your country. Make sure that your family's economic and financial situation is necessary for a family to thrive. That is no different than how a country should be. So
Absolutely.
I have a belief that the independents are going to be a substantial weight in deciding the election, as they have been in the prior 4 elections.
I take your point, but do you think that it could also mean that there could be some shockers on the way? For instance, like New York, for instance, maybe turning red. For instance, I mean, there's been a lot of talk about some states which could be completely going the opposite way.
I don't think we're going to see those types of shockers. We have what are known as the toss-up states or the swing states, where things are very, very hard to call. But it's very, very closely divided.
Closely divided. Okay. So just one additional question, then we'll switch to maybe a little bit on India and United States. There has been talk, this is just talk, that things might get really bad. It could lead to civil unrest. Now, do you think that is even a possibility in a country like the United States? Or is it just wishful thinking of some people?
Look, I think people say a lot of things in the heat of the moment. There's a possibility of anything, but the probability of that happening is so
Correct.
that realistically, I just don't think it is possible that it would happen here.
I think well said. That's a very good way to put it. So, Sanjeev, I want to just pivot this discussion now to a slightly different direction because you are, as I said, you're a successful entrepreneur, but you're also a person of an man of Indian origin. So, therefore, you wear two hats in a certain sense. So, let me ask you from an Indian point of view, and I'm sure that you also follow some Indian politics, what's going on back home in India. Who do you think would be better suited for India, Donald Trump or Kamala Harris?
Generally, the Republicans have been more steadfast in the relationship between the United States and India than have Democrats. So that's my view in the last 20, 30 years, that the Republicans tend to understand India's issues, problems, security concerns, economic concerns more clearly than do the Democrats. And that's not saying that all Democrats do not understand. There are many Democrats who understand, but typically it ends up being people who, and again, when you look at it from a standpoint of fiscal conservatism, it ties back in with the Indian mentality culture, and that's where you find a lot of common ground between India and the United States.
Yeah.
One thing that I will add to this is that many Americans of Indian origin,
Sanjeev, can you come closer to the mic? A little closer to the mic. Yeah. Yeah.
many Americans of Indian origin tend to be Republican. A case in point, Nikki Haley.
Correct.
Case in point, Vivek Ramaswamy.
Yeah.
Case in point, so when you go up and down, and many of the successful entrepreneurs, not to say that there aren't many who are also Democratic supporters,
Right.
but typically the Republican Party platform, at least from a standpoint of national security, from a standpoint of economic prosperity, from a standpoint of fiscal policy, tends to appeal to the Indian cultural mindset more than the Democratic policy platform.
There's also something strange which I have noticed. Now you talk about individuals, Sanjeev. For instance, if you take, congressmen like Ro Khanna, for instance. People like Ro Khanna, when they come to India, they have this tendency to lecture India in terms of human rights, in terms of freedom of expression, and so many of these issues. I still remember and I'm not for a moment here choosing sides or picking sides. We are having a neutral discussion completely, but I'm just pointing out some interesting comparisons. But when the Republicans would come over to India, they tend to stick to business matters, economic matters, to cooperation, moving forward. But the Democratic, I'm talking of the Indian origin Congress people, they somehow tend to, give you lectures on, as I said, on these particular issues. Is it something which goes with the territory, or is it an individual thing which is afflicting certain Congress people?
I would tend to say that it is more individualistic or personality trait. Right?
Okay.
And sometimes, and this is not a comment on any of the politicians or anything, but more of a comment or an observation on the human condition. Okay. There's a saying, do as I say, not as I do.
Yes, right. Absolutely.
And sometimes we, as human beings, once we reach a certain height of achievement, some of us tend to have this opinion that because I was successful, I can guide you and tell you how you need to be successful. As opposed to, look, I was successful because I saw an opportunity, I took that opportunity, I worked hard.
That's right.
Right? Being successful is one point, but that does not tell you how many failures one may have had before you actually achieved success.
Right.
As opposed to saying that, look, here are things that we can do that will create opportunities for you. Okay?
Right.
Those opportunities, work hard, and you will find your success however you define it. And success does not necessarily mean having a lot of money or political power or economic power. Success, at least in my view, means being content, knowing that you have done your very best,
That's right.
and being content with the results. It's when you have not done your very best,
Yeah.
then you have every right to be upset with yourself because you did not put your best effort into it.
Correct. Correct. Absolutely. Well said, Sanjeev. Now, let's talk a little bit about India and the United States relationship. It's a very strange relationship. At one level, it's so intense, so strong. The people to people connect between both the countries, as we all know, I don't have to say that, is so the kind of commonality we find with Indians find with Americans. It's like, yeah, this is something which is aspirational for us. There is a lot of technological and military cooperation going on between both the countries, and yet, in the geostrategic, in the political sense, there are huge differences. How do you explain this? Almost, I would call it a schizophrenic attitude between the both countries. That at one level it's all gung ho, and at another level it really is like bottom pits.
Well, I think it goes back from that schizophrenia that you describe. I don't see it personally, but I think if one were to look at it from a psychological analysis standpoint, you have a established superpower in America, and then you have a rising global power in India. Okay? So that relationship, when you are not equals, but you are equal, there has to be an adjustment in how you interact with each other. That's how I see it. And
Very well said. Yeah.
yeah, because at the end of the day, government is made up of people, and the people who are elected into government represent the people who elected them. Both are democracy.
Yeah. So maybe from that point of view, what you're explaining is the United States would feel that there are things we can tell India because of experience, because of what we have been through or what we have, endured. And maybe India, why isn't India listening to us? I mean, that's the way I would paraphrase what you're saying.
But interestingly, what I have also seen is that when India has taken position, U.S. scholars, including policy advisors and policy wonks, have basically come out and also said that India's position is we understand India's position because India is a country of 1.4 billion and rising. It has limited resources. It has to focus on the security of its borders and its citizens. And they understand, and they actually even when the issue with Ukraine and Russia occurred, and India was buying the oil from Russia,
That's right.
the United States did not impose any sanctions or controls on India. The United States approach was, we understand why they are doing it, we are fine with it, and there has been no issue between India and the United States.
Correct. Now, let me ask you a bit of a sensitive question. I was talking to a lot of people, and everybody knows that Indians in the US are among the highest income bracket. They are all performers. They're doing extremely well as a minority group. They're doing very well for themselves. But there's also a fear which some people have expressed that with whatever is going on in the US right now, Indians could be next on the target list, like the Jews probably have been during the pro-Palestinian protests. Do you think there is some kind of a misplaced fear, or is there's some truth behind all this?
My opinion, misplaced fear. I live in South Florida. I travel all over the United States into states and cities which are deep red or deep blue or swing states, whatever you want to name it. I have never ever experienced from anybody, including what some may be heavy Trump supporters or heavy. I have personally
Sanjeev, your voice is getting lost. Just come closer to the mic.
I
Yeah.
have never ever experienced anything in my life here, which has now been over 42 years.
Right.
Any sense of that.
That's really good to know. That's really good to know. So we can put those fears at rest, which some people have in expresses, especially in India. Do you think the Khalistan issue is a bit of a problem area between both the countries?
Not between the United States and India. Certainly between Canada and India. Okay.
Yeah.
I have read the news reports and so forth. And I think the Foreign Minister of India has articulated it pretty well what the issue is. And interestingly, where there was a similar issue where the United States had with a contract on another Sikh individual, a Khalistani supporter in the United States, I believe it was in Anam. The way the United States handled it, in contrast to the way the Canadian government handled it, and that basically shows that the United States is treating India as a friend, as a respected friend. That doesn't mean that you don't draw certain lines and say, hey, please don't do this. You're my good friend, but you're crossing certain lines. Please don't do that. It happened. Let's go and do it, but let's not have it affect our overall friendship and relationship, because each side is going to misstep. To happen.
Correct. No, that's well said and that's well put, because the difference, the approach between Canada and the United States is, of course, for everyone to see, and what you said is absolutely on the spot. Now, Sanjeev, I cannot let you go without asking you more personal questions of the journey of an Indian origin man in the US, because that hopefully will give us a lot of inspiration to a lot of people who are coming to the US, who are settling down in the US, who want to be in the US. Talk to us a little bit about your personal journey. How did you meet with so much of success? You met your life partner also in the US. A little bit about your own self, and to tell us about a successful American story, but a man of Indian origin.
Look, one thing that I was raised with by my parents, two basic things. Never lie, okay, and work hard.
Correct.
The harder you work, the more successful you are going to be. But do not do something for money. Do it because it is the right thing to do. Those were the things that are as children. Always get the best education. Education is important. Knowledge is the key to finding the right answers. So I did that my entire life, and that's how I work. And interestingly, as I continued doing my efforts, many Americans, this is going back 40 years now, many Americans saw, and they basically said, this guy's working hard, let me try and help him be more successful. I had so many mentors come out of the blue and guide me to success.
Right.
What I have found is we're not entitled to anything as human beings. We're entitled to nothing other than respect. Respect, even though it starts at a ground level, you have to work hard to maintain that respect. And the harder you work, the luckier you get.
Correct. Very inspiring words, Sanjeev, and the new people who are coming. My own son is also in the US now. I think you hold an inspiring. You are a role model for so many of the youngsters who are coming in, that this is the way to go. And absolutely well said. In Hindi we have a word, it's called parishram, which means hard work. And we also have a saying back home is that hard work never goes waste, and you exemplify that particular approach. So Sanjeev, thank you so much for being on the CAA show, sharing your thoughts about American elections, and we hope to continue to do this with you in the future also, on interesting topics between both countries. There's so much going on, there's so much of commonality, so much of goodwill, I would say, between both the countries. We need to address that, and we'll come back to you at a future date. But thank you so much for giving us your time, Sanjeev.
Thank you, Juggi. Dhanyawad and namaskar to all of your listeners.
Thank you so much. Bye.